These are the stories behind your favorite disciple songs.
It's just a matter of time. A few days ago, I saw you were fine. Remembering what you said about the book you read, the one I got you, the beginning of the end.
Story behind the song, dynamic duo edition, because we are Westless today. Westless leg syndrome.
Oh gosh.
All off the cuff, ladies and gentlemen.
I know. It's how the West was lost.
How the West was lost. Oh man, that's great. It's just me and Kev today. We leave in a few days for a 5+ week tour, and Joey's birthday is occurring during said tour, and so he had been planning his parents had been planning to take him out tonight, and I've had family in town. We've all had stuff going on, so it just worked out that tonight had to be the night that we did this episode, and that is why we decided to give Joey the night off. And
don't make it look like he's got a good reason.
No, he just really wants to hit the gifts and cake.
You scared me when you first started talking about whatever. I thought you were about to say that his birthday was right now, and
his birthday's today,
and I was like,
and none of us have wished him.
And I was like, terrible friend, and
friends ever.
And then I was like, his birthday's not today. I know exactly what day it is. So
yeah,
I don't have to buy his airline ticket, so I know exactly what his birthday is.
Exactly right, and his frequent flyer numbers.
I do know that too.
So we thought that we would take this opportunity, even though the album just came out. We've got a bunch of new songs we're going to be digging into over the next however many months on this segment. I thought this would be a cool time to go back in time to a song that predates Joey and myself, because to find something that Joey wouldn't have as much input on. But rest assured, future months we will be unearthing all the new songs from Love Letter Kill Shot that y'all want to see. So
you are literally just all of these like code words and phrases that are making me think of dinosaurs. You just used predates, and then I was like dinosaurs, and then unearthed dinosaurs again. It's like you're just
so we're going to be excavating this song and just really finding out what's at the bottom of it. What were the bones of this song like?
When you actually look at the carbon dating of this song, it was written long before it ever actually was released. True story.
Is that
no. There's so much about the song "Things Left Unsaid" that's interesting, things to talk about.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into it because I've heard your spiel about it from stage a lot, but I've honestly never really heard a lot about other parts of the process and the recording, the release, and stuff like that. So I guess start from the beginning. What you remember? Obviously it has a very obvious start, but start there, I guess.
The story begins really like when I was 6 years old. So I was at church, and I remember the pastor giving a sermon about, if you have sin in your life and you want to give your life to Christ, and the Braves and Mets have gone extra innings. If you have sin in your life, if you want to give your life to Christ. And I was like, yeah, of course. I was just 6 years old, and Blair is 6 years old, my daughter, my middle daughter. And so it would be the equivalent of her asking me, that she wanted to give her life to Christ. And I remember my grandfather was there at church, and I asked him, to go with me. I think I actually walked down to the front by myself, if I remember correctly. That I went down there by myself, and then he joined me. That may be accurate or may not be accurate. 6 years old was a long time ago.
Yeah, 20 years ago. Yeah.
But what I know for a fact is once I was down at the front of the church, ready to give my life to Christ, he was the only one that was there with me. So I walked down to the front of the church and like turned around on the front pew, if that makes sense. So I'm not like facing the pulpit.
Sure.
I walked down to front of the church and then I turned around to pray on the front pew.
Gotcha.
And I remember him being there and him asking me, and you know, like, you know what you're doing? You know, like, you really know what you're doing? I was like, yeah, I have sin in my life. And I want to give my life to Christ, because as a 6-year-old, I had been spanked a lot at that point, which totally makes sense, because I have spanked my 4-year-old son so many times that I'm thinking that he's going to, when he hears the salvation message, he's going to get it. He's going to be like, dude, I need Jesus. Yeah, because I have been bad. So anyway, so he was just kind of like, you know, you sure you know what you're doing? I'm like, yeah, I have been, you know, bad. I need Jesus, you know, in my life. And he led me to the Lord that day. Now, come to find out, I remember that meaning a whole lot to me, but him not really remembering it, or really maybe not putting a placeholder that
Gotcha.
was like for real, because I was 6. He probably like put it to the side and wondered if it was a real salvation conversion or whatever. But for me, it was it.
Yeah.
You know, like in my life, that is like, you look at the timeline of my life and it's like a memorial, you know, an altar set up there, you know, like that is the day I gave my life to Christ. And my grandfather was such an amazing man. Like, he and my grandmother both, I would go and stay over there, and they were such cool grandparents, you know, as far as Christian grandparents. Before we would go to bed, they would read like a chapter of the Bible every night out loud before they would go to bed to each other. And so when we went over there, didn't matter where they were in the Bible, they were just didn't matter if we understood it, or, you know, we're just going to pick up in Luke chapter 16 today. That's where they were. And they read, you know, Luke chapter 16 out loud every night. You know, we gathered around, and it was like super cool, man.
Yeah.
Really, really super cool looking back, thinking, you know, that how just normal that was, but how now that I'm a grown man, not normal at all.
Yeah.
You know, that's not normal at all. It's such a really cool thing. And but in my childhood, that was just normal. We were going to read the chapter of the Bible, and then after we read the Bible, they would pray before they went to bed together. And so we would just pray, and I remember them just always laying their hands on me. And I specifically remember prayers like, you know, God, use his life, you know, to do something great, you know, for you. And, you know, so I got exposed to Christian rock at a very early age. It was like 1987 or 1988, which so I would have been 11 or 12 years old. And I'm pretty sure it was like 87. And a little bit in 86, but the moment where my life changed forever was when my youth pastor gave me a Christian rock tape, which was White Cross's first album, which did come out in 1987. And so I'm pretty sure that was the year that it was. Regardless, that brought some issues into my family, to where I was having all these conversations with my mom and my grandparents, like Christian rock is of the devil. These guys have long hair. I started like, you know, growing my hair out a little bit like these guys, you know.
Yeah.
You know, there's this verse in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 14. Let's just see if I'm right. I think that's what it is. And my grandfather loved to have big, long conversations about Jesus. And we would talk about Jesus all the time, and I loved it. I mean, it was just so awesome. And he would give me total crap about my hair. You know, it'd just be like, Kev, you know, like 1 Corinthians, you know, 11, 14, like, isn't it? I was right, man.
Yeah.
Granddad's going to make sure you know what verse this is that he's trying to talk about, okay? He's like, isn't it obvious that it's disgraceful for a man to have long hair? It's right there. It's in the Bible.
It's obvious.
Right there. Isn't it obvious? And isn't, you know, and he would read that to me. And you got to understand, like, my grandmother had like mature old lady, vintage old lady hair that's like, you know, it's like this.
Yes.
Right? You know, and it literally doesn't even come, you know, past her jawline.
Right.
Okay. That's how short her hair is.
Right.
And I would be, but Granddad, why don't we read the next verse? And it's like, and isn't long hair a woman's pride and joy? For it has been given to her as a covering. And I'm like, Granddad.
Yeah.
So we would just be like firing off at each other, you know. He'd be like, you know, isn't it obvious? This is a disgrace for you. And I'm like, well, isn't it obvious, you know, that she's clearly being rebellious against the word of God here in this old lady grandmother haircut. She's supposed to let it grow long, you know. That's right there. Dude, so we'd be just like firing off, you know, and. But he loved me so much, and we would have these big, long conversations. He's a big, huge John Hagee fan. I grew up Pentecostal, so if you want to jump for that, fine. Not you particularly, Josiah, whoever's watching.
I really do.
I grew up Pentecostal, so we were crazy and wild and running the aisles and all that. We were very excited about Jesus. We believe in a God that's actually alive. He's more than just, just words on a page that we talk about. We believe in a God, and still do, believe in a God that actually might show up and do things. So anyway, so that's the kind of church that I grew up in.
Now, let me sorry. I don't want to jump ahead, but I do have a question, and it might be jumping ahead. Let me know. When you started playing shows with Disciple, did Grandpa come to any shows?
No, not very non-supportive of this whole part. So he was a big John Hagee fan. So I said that's why I was Pentecostal, growing up. And so John Hagee would fall in that category. And he wrote this book called, and I started working at a Christian bookstore as soon as I graduated high school. And I was in Disciple at the same time. But, Disciple and my work, they were both side jobs, really, because Disciple in 1994 was when I graduated high school. Right. We say we started in 92, which we did, but, we were still in high school, so there was only so much that we could do. So, in 94, I graduated. I worked at Pizza Hut for a couple of years. So, like in 96, 97, I started working for this Christian bookstore. And around that time, John Hagee came out with this book called The Beginning of the End. And Granddad was just like, he just loved, he was like, oh man, can you get me that book? And I was like, yeah. And then he would just talk about it, and he would just like read it, listen to this excerpt and listen to this. And oh man, is I think he came up with a follow-up book, Dawn, something, I don't know, whatever. But he was just like, he'd be so excited, and we would just talk about it and talk about this, talk about that end time stuff. And every time we were together, man, I mean, we were talking about God. It's like his world was just talking about God, and yeah, he did throw a jab in there about the long hair every once in a while, but like 98% of what we were talking about, wasn't that. It was just talking about God and talking about, how awesome God is and this and that. And they didn't get the Christian rock thing. They just didn't understand. I have no negativity towards them not getting it either. That makes sense, to me, that they didn't get it. Like, like if I grew up and fought in World War II and, 35, 40 years later, I see a bunch of dudes wearing tight leather and growing their hair out and Striper putting makeup on and then singing Jesus at the same time, I'd be like, that's weird.
Yeah, I'm not about that. Yeah.
Sure that I don't want you listening to that. Like that makes sense. Like totally. I get it. And
the context is totally there. Yeah.
Context, yes. This is the greatest generation according to Tom Brokaw. This is World War II. So folks and Granddad fought, in World War II. So that being said, in the late 90s, Disciple, was really starting to pick up and tour. And I'll say one more thing real quick. I remember getting my first tattoo, like this one on my leg. So let's see.
Throw it up here.
Yeah, right there. I remember getting that. This is Alpha and Omega. These were symbols that actually came out of my Bible that I would see every day when I was reading my Bible. And I thought that those symbols so cool. So this symbol was always in Old Testament, like little footnotes, and then this symbol was always in the New Testament footnotes. Cool. The beginning and the end, baby.
And so like,
and so like, that was also the Bible that they got me.
So cool.
I think it's my mom got it for me. They got me my first Bible, and my mom got me the second one. Anyway, so I remember getting my first tattoo and going over to his house, and he said, "Let me see it." And it was the same reaction that my dad had when I got an earring. It's so funny that these men in my life, were just so like they acted very similar. He said, let me see it. And he literally I remember him just standing there, just didn't say a thing, just like the long hair was bad enough.
Right. This was just.
Now you have literally drawn on your body with a Sharpie.
Icing on the cake, yeah.
He just was
Dang.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
I remember, just things like that. And it's one other thing that I'll get into the song. So I remember one time he was talking about he led somebody to the Lord, in a sinner's prayer or whatever. And I said, "Granddad, you did that with me too." And he was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, "I was 6 years old and you led me in that prayer." And he goes, "What?" Wow. I go, "Yeah. You don't remember that?" It's like, I remember it. I was like, that's the moment, that's the day I gave my life to Christ. And he was like, "Really?" And even still, I think he was just kind of like, I don't know. He's, like.
You know what that reminds me of is the story you tell about your accountant who, you went all this time not knowing that you had this major impact on him in a moment where he was about to take his life. Spoiler alert. It's a story that Kevin tells from stage fairly often. And you went 4 years not knowing that when you had called him, that you helped him not do that. And
it's very much
sounds kind of similar.
Exactly like that. I mean, because I was 6 years old by this point, in the late 90s, I would have been in my 20s,
right.
Early 20s.
Right.
So I remember just being like, whatever. And I'm like, yeah, amen. Yeah, that was you. You're the one that led me to Christ, right?
Yeah.
So in the late 90s, Disciple starts to pick up, and we're really touring. 98, 99 was just a crazy touring time. You see this might sting a little, world tour shirts where in April and May, there was only 3 days that we didn't have a show.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know, I couldn't tell you what we got paid back then, and I have no idea. It was next to nothing, and maybe even some free shows thrown in there, maybe mostly free. I don't really remember, but I can tell you that it was just insane, and how much we played. We played all the time, and we'd show up, and we had no sound guy.
Yeah, right. You're just going, you're setting up and playing.
Just set it up, put a microphone in front of us, and boom, here we go. And anyway, so I remember being on the road and getting the phone call. And
this was in 99, you think?
"Hey, bud, come on. I told you I got to do this. If you need anything, go talk to Mommy, okay?"
I'll just look it up. Is that a transformer?
Buddy, yes. There's 4 million Transformers in here. As a grown-up child. Anyway.
Great. Real life, Rebel Society right here. Real life.
So I promised him after we get done with this call that we're going to open up a Transformer together.
So he's just like, how long is this going to take?
Yeah, like
9 hours.
Why are you talking so much?
Yeah.
Like, let's do this.
So
Anyway.
Do you remember if it was 98 or 99? This was happening around then?
I don't remember when this exactly happened, but it was in that time frame. So we're on the road, and I get, the phone call that Granddad had went into a coma, and and it doesn't look good. And so I get home. I remember getting home, and everybody was, there at the hospital, and I went over there, and I remember, like just being speechless and not really being able to say anything. I remember, just be, when you're so full of emotion that you're blank.
Totally.
That you're just or so in shock that you're just like, you don't even know how to form sentences, and you're just kind of, that's what I was. And I just remember being at the hospital with him and just being that way. And I remember so many vivid memories. I remember my grandmother just praying over him. I remember his feet swelling and being in a coma, and her like massaging his feet, trying to get the swelling to go down. I just remember all of these things. I mean, this was just a very beloved man, and it is part of the story that, people don't know is that my real grandfather died in Normandy, not in the invasion of Normandy in World War II. He went in like 2 weeks after the invasion of Normandy and died, shortly after, I think, 8 or 9 days after he landed on the beach in July. Anyway, and this man married my grandmother like 6 years later. So my mom was like 6 or 7 years old when this became her stepdad. But see, this was the only granddad I ever know. So side note, right. So he was a beloved man. Yeah. Like, even though he was, stepdad, it was like, right. Real dad to them.
Well, he was the only dad your mom knew.
Only dad they ever had.
Right.
And I didn't even understand as a man, even in my 20s, the whole like significance of stepdad and things like that, so he's just so beloved, and all these people were just around him and just so, praying for him and loving on him and all of these things. And I just was speechless. I never said a word. And I remember, going home and started and thinking about this man that I've had all these conversations with about God, this man that I have, been to his house and heard read countless chapters of the Bible, and countless times he has laid his hands on me and prayed for me. Countless times that I've been to church and heard him speak or preach or sing a song and all of these things, and just been around him so much. And then I was like, I never told him thank you, and like, I never said, I told him, I was like, yeah, you're the one that led me to Jesus. You don't remember that, But I never was like, thanks for doing that, And in that moment of like, he's in a coma, he might not make it out. I'm like, oh man, I need that. He probably doesn't need it. He's probably like, I don't even know what you're talking about. But like, for me, I needed that. To tell it, like, you were a good man. Like, without you in my life, like, I would not be who I am today. I would not know Jesus. I would not, all these things that you don't completely understand, but I know that God is using. Like, none of these things would be happening in my life if it weren't for you. Right. And I needed it so bad. And I remember going back to the hospital the next day and still just speechless. It was the craziest thing, man. I mean, speechless is not my game. And the whole slow to speak verse is not one that I take literally. It's like the long hair one. It's like, yeah. So I remember going to the hospital and just like kind of just, like sitting there just for the longest time, and everyone left, and they were like, are you going to stay? And I'm like, I'm going to stay. And everybody goes home, and it's 9 o'clock, and it's 10 o'clock, and it's 11, and I'm just sitting there, and it's midnight, it's 1, it's 2, and I still haven't said a word. And it was so weird. I was like, I needed it to be right, and I just wanted him to wake up, and I guess I was just waiting for him to wake up, and then I just finally just was like, screw it. And I literally crawled up in bed with him and like laid down with him and literally like just put my head up on his head and just held him and hugged him and just said all the things that I should have said a long time ago, And so I think it was the next day that he passed away. And I was just so like, I specifically remember driving by his house and getting this urgency before he passed away that I needed to go by there. I remember this urgency, and now I recognize it as the Holy Spirit,
Wow.
And I remember it happened probably 40 times.
Really?
This urgency to go by there. And I did go by there. I listened to the urgency, but I just went over to hang out. And maybe that's enough, I mean, for whatever. Yeah. But to me, I felt a lot of guilt for not saying what I needed to say, or felt what I needed to say. I remember those kind of things, and it just bothered me. And my self-medication is writing songs about what I'm going through. And I remember writing this song. It's the late 90s, and I'm writing this song, and it was very simple, and it was 5 chords, maybe 4. Is it 5, 4? But 5 chords.
It's 5. Yeah.
Very simple 5-chord song, and everyone
on piano. Do you remember?
And I remember just that night. It's almost kind of rappy, in a way. It's got a little hip hop.
It's got a flow to it.
Matter of time, a few days ago, I saw you were fine. I remember what you said. It's kind of got that, whatever. And every word is like, it's really what happened, and the book I Got You, the beginning of the end, is the book I got him from working at the bookstore.
I think that's what's probably so part of what's so cool about that song and impactful to people who hear it is just how obvious it is that it is just in the moment, almost stream of consciousness. You're not trying to be clever and artistic. It's just like it's like your heart is just coming out through your voice. And,
it was amazing to me as I was writing it, how the rhymes just started. I was just literally telling the story of the whole thing, of how it happened, and then just ended up just rhyming, and then like
amazing.
And then just getting to it, if you fly away tonight, I want to tell you that I love you. I hope you can hear me. I hope you can feel me. I mean, it's literally that's what happened.
Yeah.
Like I'm lying with them, and I'm crying and I'm just literally weeping. Like, I really hope you can hear me. I hope you can feel me. That you fly away tonight. I'm sorry, that I didn't, tell you this, when I should have. And then the hope in the song is, goodbye for now. I'll see you again some way, somehow, when it's my time to go to the other side, I'll hold you again. I'll melt at your smile. But now all I have are the ones that I'm with. And you this moment taught me not to take for granted the time that we have to show that we care, to say to the ones, right now, I love these words. I love you. Like that moment, meant so much to me, and as well as I do, like I don't screw around with that.
No way.
I tell you immediately how I feel, good or bad. I don't mess around with that. If somebody needs my forgiveness, we're going to expedite this situation. Right. If somebody needs talking to or whatever, it will be expeditious on my end. If there's someone that I need to thank or whatever, or just need to tell them how I appreciate them, it will be expeditious. And I refuse to allow that situation to look at any shell of someone's temporary place of life. To look at one more casket and say, I wish I would have, said this, or I wish I would have said that. And so, that was it. And again, if you think about it, the song did not come out till 6 years later.
Yeah. So tell about that.
So wrote the song and we practiced it, and I would just bawl my eyes out and cry every time we performed it. And
this is still you and Brad and Tim, right?
This is me, Brad, and Tim. And I was like, I can't do it. Wow. And I was like, let's just wait and let some time pass. Because I didn't write it for anybody. Right. I wrote that song for me. Right. That song was not for anybody else. It was just like, I wrote that as a self-medication process of healing to try to get over the guilt that I felt for this wonderful man that I didn't, tell him I appreciate him and love him and thank you. And
did the guys like it? Did they want to like perform it, or do you remember how they felt about it? I mean, at that time, that would have been one of the most amazing ballads that you had as far as the songwriting goes. So
as you know, sometimes you just don't know what you've got when you've written something.
Sure.
And I don't think that we knew, and I definitely don't think that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it had a cool message. It really wasn't about Jesus. It was really, and that was kind of an interesting, different thing that we didn't really write songs that weren't really about Jesus back then, real world issues that we write about often now. But back then, that was a little bit more of like new territory to write a song about just something going wrong.
I never thought about that. That's crazy.
At that point, the late 90s, just kind of an issue that you're going through. And I think, this was one of those songs that kind of helped me progress into starting to write about issues. I was like, this actually is a good outlet. These are good ideas. This is inspiration, Girlfriend cheats on me. I'm like, woo! And thank you. That's a cool song. I appreciate it.
I dedicate these Spotify royalties to you. Right. All the pennies.
Oh Lord. Anyway,
so you couldn't play the song. You couldn't. It wasn't going to happen.
Not happen. Oh, dude, not happening.
Right.
And
but you put out several more albums between.
We put out By God. Right. We put out Back Again. And then when it came time for self-titled to happen, we were independent and we were going to put it out independently. And we signed with SRE Records, which was a division of INO Records. And INO is like Mercy Me's the big artist on INO. And I remember the president of SRE Records, we were submitting the song. We were like, here's a really cool song. It's been a while. I was like, couldn't really sing it at first. But it's a cool song that I think, we could use. And he was like, I'm not really into it. And he's like, it's so sad. He's like, and he didn't like it. He didn't want it. He didn't want it. He was like,
and was it the fully produced version that ended up
the exact same version that today?
Wow. You heard that? One. Didn't think it. Wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we re-recorded it. We put it on. There were several songs that we recorded that ended up being the Things Left Unsaid EP later.
Gotcha.
So, but at this point, they were just other songs that we recorded.
Right.
Suicide, Things Left Unsaid, and there was a
Tribute. Is that one?
No, it was on there, and then there was a Depeche Mode cover. I Feel You.
Feel You. That's right.
And one other one I can't remember. Anyway, so
this is the part in the show where everyone who's watching who knows the answer is like, "It's this, Kevin."
Pain. Pain.
There you go. Song. Pain.
So yeah, he was like, he wasn't into it, and I really believed in it, and I remember. You know how I am. I said, okay, but I want to go on record.
Totally, Kevin.
That's totally how I do. I'm like, that's fine. If you don't want to put it on the album, that's fine. I want to go on record and say that I think you're wrong.
Okay.
And I think it deserves to be on the record, and I think it's a great song. We put it on the shelf for years and years and years because I really wasn't able to perform it. Now I think it's a great song. I think it's time. We've recorded it. Yep. It sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And I think that it's very emotional. I think people will dig it. And so he was like, it's so sad. He goes, and he used this term I never heard, but I thought was hilarious. He goes, I know if they cry, they buy. And I'm like,
dang.
This is total music business language. If they cry, they buy. I'm like, oh my God.
I have heard that in CCM world before.
Like, whoa.
And
well, and he goes,
very cynical.
I know there is that, element to it. And I'm like, I was just thinking it was a cool song.
That's the last thing that you wrote it for. Like, it's the last thing. Yeah.
I'm not trying to buy a new couch off this sucker. Right?
Right.
It's
Right.
a song I wrote, okay, from my heart. So anyway, so it doesn't go on the record.
Right.
And so it nothing. That's it.
Yeah.
Nothing. And so self-titled does really well. And this is the part where it gets hazy. I don't remember if the Things Left Unsaid EP came out. I think it did. It came out like later, like a special edition in between self-titled and Scars Remain. It came out as like a special edition later.
Gotcha.
And so
it says it was released on June 6th, 2006.
Okay, and so Scars Remain came out after that.
Later that year, I think.
Yeah, into the end of 2006.
Yes.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
you go.
So there you go. So it came out right before Scars Remain, kind of like months before Scars Remain, really. And so, so this is what happened. So After the World is our big song from Scars Remain, and it's our first crossover, what they consider crossover, into CHR hit, and it's like a crazy hit. It was number one on Christian rock, and it goes number one on Christian CHR, and it was a huge deal.
Brand
And so,
new territory for Disciple.
yes,
Super exciting for a record label. Like that's exactly what they dream about, right?
they're totally pumped about it. They're totally pumped. They're just like, oh my gosh, we have a hit here.
Yeah.
And then they look at Scars Remain, and they're like, we don't have a song to follow up with After the World.
Because there's maybe there's one other slow song on that album.
Another slow song on the end of the album, and it was called No End at All.
It's
and
not a single. It's not really a
they
single.
didn't think it was strong enough to be a radio single, and so they were like, we have nothing to follow up with this song, and I go. Got to totally show my colors, which you see it all the time.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love your colors.
and I was like, hey, yeah. So you remember that song that you didn't think was good enough to be on the whatever? I was like, you should consider releasing that as a follow-up single. And they were like, okay, all right. That's a good idea. And actually, the president of SRE had moved on by this point at the Scars Remain anyway. It actually, Jeff Mosley took over the president of
There you
IMO.
go.
He had taken over, and so I think that was given. That idea was given to him, and then he was like, let's try that." And so we literally released as a follow-up single a actual song that wasn't even on Scars Remain.
Right. So
Now,
it's so yeah.
No one has ever done that.
Strange. Yeah. So
we had
unique.
After the World come out, and our follow-up single to After the World is a song from the album's special edition.
Yeah, before the previous album's special edition. It's got to be. It's a music industry rarity. That's so interesting. But when you think about it economically, the label had a lot of that. There's a lot of great benefit to that. You're not having to pay for go to do a new recording, mixing, mastering, all this stuff. You've already got it done. Ready? It can be released right now. It's interesting.
So check this out. So this is the one really cool thing that happened with the song. So After the World was such a big hit. It was number one on Christian rock, number one on Christian CHR. Things Left Unsaid made it all the way to number 3.
It's amazing.
And the only reason that it didn't go number 1 was because that some stations were still playing After the World.
After the World. That's so funny.
So it went all the way to number 3, but some stations weren't playing Things Left Unsaid because they were still playing After the World. And so, we had 2 songs on CHR, which if you don't know what CHR is, it's like the bigger. There was in those days in the mid 2000s, there were 3 tiers of
Christian
success.
Radio.
Yeah, there's AC, adult contemporary, and that's just huge. I mean,
That's Mercy Me and Newsboards
and those kind of radio dollars, they're making money. You write a song on AC and it becomes a hit, you're doing really well. And then underneath that is CHR, which is a little bit more aggressive and a little bit more attitude. And then under that is Christian rock, those of us who can't feed our families. So there you go.
Great.
So that was the tier. So to have a song on this next level of CHR,
Yes.
really big deal. And it made it to number 3. And I remember making a phone call to the former president of SRE.
No way.
He moved up. Well, we're buddies, and he moved on to be the president of Centricity Records.
Oh, yeah.
And I called him, and I was like, hey, it made it to Things Left Unsaid made it to number 3. And he goes, this is the moment where you tell me that you were right and I was wrong. And I was like, yeah, isn't it awesome? It's that moment. You guessed it. It is that very moment. And he goes, congratulations, Kevin. That's great, you guys.
That's pretty sweet satisfaction right there. Yeah.
Like, you nailed it. Got it.
It's amazing. And I mean, that kind of 1-2 punch, again, especially back in those days, was so clutch to just broadening your audience big time, getting on new kind of tours. I don't know how that lined up with y'all as far as your place in the industry. Scars Remain was obviously the biggest selling album to date at that point. And having
a small margin.
Right. And having those 2 big singles on it, as well as all the great rock songs that were doing well also. And
Things Left Unsaid wasn't on the album, though.
Right. But as far as the album cycle, just like people's understand, the general public's perception of Disciple was, massively growing. So, that must have been a really awesome time. Very exciting.
Absolutely. Now let's look at the Spotify for Artists app and see if we can look at all-time streams.
Yeah,
and
I've also got the YouTube page up with it, and I got some quotes I want to read at some point.
Great.
Comments.
All-time Things Left Unsaid on all-time Spotify is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's Disciple's 6th biggest song.
It's amazing.
Time.
It's amazing.
The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is Dear X, Game On, Invisible, Erase, and Once and For All.
There you go. It's a good spread. It's a good spread right there.
Yeah, gosh, wow. That's a lot of years.
Yeah. Covered in 6 slots.
Yeah. Crazy.
Yeah, it's a song that we get asked about a lot, and that we play it every now and then. We did it in a medley for a while. And we've only made, I think maybe one time we played it. I remember playing it in Germany, just stripped down, but we played the full song one time. And
I love playing the song, but it is a weird song to put in our set because of like the moments that we're trying to create. In Disciple, we're trying to create these moments of a roller coaster of highs and lows, of where we want to really get pumped up and really get excited and really have a good time and put on a good show and have everybody excited and have everybody jump up and get sweaty and whatever. And then talk about serious things, as well. And then, and talk about Jesus and our need for him and create these moments and Things Left Unsaid, like the president of this record label said, it's so sad.
Right. Well, yeah, you're right.
It creates this moment that's just kind of like,
you don't know what to do with it almost, because it does create the moment. It is a very distinct moment when we do play it. But you're right. It's like hard to know what to do with that moment, because it's not obvious to turn that into a salvation message. It's not a song about Jesus. It's just like, this heavy song about life.
You suck. You're not saying the things that you should have said. And let me just make you feel bad about it.
Well, that's why it was cool. I loved when you had this idea for us to do the medley. We were doing a bunch of our kind of slower songs in a medley, and the medley ended with Things Left Unsaid into the song Eternity, which is the song you wrote as a response to Things Left Unsaid. So we could touch on that real quick.
Yeah, Eternity is a song that I thought, okay, I've said whatever I wanted to say in the Things Left Unsaid context of that night. But what if my granddad actually did wake up, and was aware that, hey, this is it. You only have a few breaths left. What would he say to me after he heard me say, thank you for leading me to Christ? What would he say? And so Eternity was my take on what I think that he would have said to me. And so, we were playing that in the medley. We played Things Left Unsaid first, and then the answer to it, and that was a really cool thing. I think we did that a lot actually for a while.
Yeah. We did it for at least a year, I think. It was really strong. So to y'all listening, if you've never done that, go listen to Things Left Unsaid and then immediately listen to Eternity. And I think it's pretty cool the way you did that. So kudos. Yeah. So I'm on the YouTube page, which
2010. So
yeah,
it was a long time after.
Over a decade after. Yeah,
That's
incredible.
I mean, so it's an
cool.
experience that was life defining.
Yes, and spanned much time.
It changed my character. This you have those things and events in your life that really change who you are and how you behave and how you respond to situations. This was a life altering event.
Yeah.
Him passing, such an important person, and him passing, and me going, "What in the world?" Like, I don't tell people how I feel. Yeah. I don't say I love you. I don't say thank you. I am a really ungrateful person. Like, I am not going to be that way ever again. And so I'm.
You're not.
Not at all. Not like that at all.
It's awesome, man. Yeah, I'm on the YouTube page. This is just actually the most viewed. This is a funny thing about YouTube, as you know, is especially for many years, it was kind of the Wild West where just someone could just upload, a lyric video to your song and it just shoot to the top of search results. And so because it just goes unchecked. Now, like when we put out this new album, Tooth and Nail's on top of that, and they're taking down videos that aren't official. Right. But in this case, Things Left Unsaid, the top video with 800,000 views is just someone's lyric video that they made that is not official by any means. And it's just, a rip, probably. Maybe the MP3 probably isn't full quality or whatever, but it's the one that everyone's watching. And
you're welcome.
Yeah, that's right. And it's got 550 comments.
Good Lord.
Yeah. So it's that song that people hear. It does pull a reaction out of people. And a lot of these are super sad. I'm not going to read a lot of the super sad ones.
That's the thing, man. That's the thing about I'm fine now. I'm over it. And so when this song hits somebody fresh and they're going through it is, oh my gosh, it's just.
Well, there's one here. One of the top ones is my friend is in the hospital near the end, and I sang this in his ears while he was unconscious. And there's quite a few like that. There's a bunch of just people who are resonating with it because of someone who passed that they feel this way about. And it really is. Come
up this and say they sang it at their brother's funeral.
Yes.
Or son's funeral.
Yes, we heard that recently from someone at a show. And yeah, I mean, literally, if you just go down this comment list, man, it is just, it's super heavy, but it's also beautiful, just tribute to, people who lost loved ones. And this song is helping them through it, or this song is helping them say the, things that they need to say to the people in their life. And just, there's no other Disciple song like that. You know what I mean? There's no other Disciple song that has that kind of effect.
The thing that this song taught me the most was that this was a selfish song. I wrote this for no one. This had no love motive or evangelistic motive behind it whatsoever. I wrote it for one person, and I wrote it for me to be able to get through, what I was dealing with. And what I learned from that is that what I'm going through is not so unique to the human experience. Wow. And that when I go through something, there's a really good chance that 90% of everybody who lives is going to go through this same thing at some point in their life. And that me writing something from my selfish point of view actually can reach somebody else through what they're going through. And that was the furthest thing from my mind as I was penning these lyrics. I wasn't thinking about that at all. I wasn't thinking, somebody's going to hear this and really be blessed by it.
Right.
Not even close to, just being honest, that wasn't even anywhere near my brain. And now it's been out and I hear people tell me this and I'm blown away by how unintentional the ministry of this song was. that, you know, disciple is very intentionally ministry oriented, but not in this case. No, not in this song.
And we see the results of those intentions so often, and we're like, okay, oh great, it's getting the reaction that we hoped it would.
We wanted this song to minister to people. You know,
we wanted Radical to create this feeling. Exactly.
Yes.
You know.
Yes, we intended. I want Never Too Late from the Love Letter Kill Shot. I want Never Too Late to minister to people, you know, who, you know, are really struggling with shame and guilt and like, you know, I have screwed up too much. I intend for that to minister to people, you know.
And so when that happens, you're like sweet.
That. Yeah, exactly. Things Up Unsaid was not like that. And somehow it just ministers to people the most, you know. It's like that is a scenario that all of us are going to go through.
Well, I think it too. It's there's got to be an element too of just surprise. Like it almost can catch people off guard when they hear it, because if they know anything about Disciple, then they probably mostly know the ministry type songs and the anthems and the, you know, and the evangelical side of it. And so if you're just listening to a Disciple playlist and you're kind of new as a listener, that song can totally catch you off guard and give you that emotional moment that you didn't realize was coming. Same with when it was played on radio, I'm sure. You know, when CHR stations, I mean, think about, I'd love to see, honestly, the rest of the chart at that time, because I bet you got a lot of songs that are more just straightforward CCM, worshipy, and or, you know.
Well, it's Billboard. Go to Billboard Christian CHR around 2007.
That would, I will definitely try. But just like that idea of that song just coming on the radio when you're just listening for like encouraging spiritual songs, and that song hits you, I mean, how can you not like just be caught off guard and react?
I cannot imagine a 40-year-old soccer mom like listening to Mercy Me, one song, you know, and then Toby Mac, and then, you know, and feeling really good about life, you know, and just burning down the road, listening to some Big Daddy Weave. Then all of a sudden, like, Disciple comes on and says, you know, let's just be sad for a minute. I can't even imagine, like, you know, this, soccer moms pulling the van over on the side of the road and hopefully calling their mom and dad saying I love you. I don't know.
Man,
that's kind of what I hope now, you know, like that. That when people hear it, I kind of hope. And whenever we played it live, I've always said, like, hey, man, if you need to pick up the phone, do it tonight. You know, and you're going to look at your watch and go, I can't. It's 11.
Exactly.
Who cares?
Exactly.
You know, who cares that it's 11? Pick up the phone and do it.
Man. Okay. Oh, okay. I found some charts. Billboard actually does have the archive on. Oh, it's only for Billboard Pro subscribers.
I have Billboard.
It's $12 a month.
I literally just killed it because they like stopped carrying the Christian rock. And so I stopped.
Well, I could tell you what it tells you what the top songs are for all these dates, at least. We got Does Anybody Hear Her by Casting Crowns. I think that's a sad song, but still not as sad as yours. Made to Love, Toby Mac.
I would like to love you.
La 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 la. I'm Not Who I Was, Brandon Heath. Every Time I Breathe, the Big Daddy Weave.
Told you. Bam.
East to West, Casting Crowns.
That's a great song.
Yeah. So, yeah, a bunch of just kind of what you would consider straightforward.
That's CHR, not AC, right? That's CHR.
Well, it's hard for me to tell based on the way it's worded here. It's actually different wording than I'm used to. It says Christian airplay, Christian songs, hot Christian songs. Ooh. I assume hot was AC, but anyway, that's kind of just what I'm seeing here. But nevertheless, I'm sure it was a standout song, just emotionally. Well, yeah, I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Yeah, it's one of those songs. Again, we get asked about it a lot. I mean, when you think about the time that it was written, again, looking at that list of Spotify songs, I mean, it was released in 06, but it was written in 99 or something.
98, 99, yeah.
98, 99. So as far as going back in the catalog of Disciple or Kevin Young songs, it's for sure the highest ratio of oldest and success, like whatever the age success ratio would be, it's got to be the top one.
It's crazy.
You know,
I can't even believe that thinking about it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
I remember playing the song for my grandmother,
Really?
which was a terrible idea because, I mean, you're kind of looking for some validation because, like I said, they didn't understand and they didn't get it. And I was thinking, oh, this song's one of our slower songs. She'll probably like it. She still didn't get it. I was like, oh, I wrote this song for Granddad, you know, and I probably should have had some kind of like printout of like, these are the lyrics and follow along, because she probably didn't even understand a word of you know, like she's like this flow going and talking about this thing, and she was just kind of like, what is happening here?
And you're rocking for her.
It was like one of our slower songs. It's still way too heavy, you know, for my grandmother. But she just, you know, if you fly, oh, there's an electric guitar in here.
Turn it off.
Still sounds satanic to me.
So funny.
Yeah, she didn't get. I remember specifically thinking in my mind. You know how like you know when you're trying to like get approval, you know, for something. I was like, yeah. It was years after the song came out. I was like, she's like, yeah, I heard that you wrote this song, you know, for Granddad, you know, and I was like,
you're like,
yeah,
yes.
I did. Well, I was like, would you like to hear it? You know. You know, I don't remember if she was excited or not excited, but I remember exactly where we were, the corner of the house, and like put it on this little boom box or whatever, played it for her. And I remember the reaction after it was over, and I was just hoping for like, you know, oh, that was really sweet, or that was nice. And she was just kind of like, same as when he saw me at the tattoo. He was just, she was kind of I'm not really. I don't know.
Oh man!
I
hope I never give you that reaction when you play me a song that you've written. I really try to,
you. That's for sure. On all your big songs that you've written, the first reaction. I don't know. You got to give me the. See, I told you, it's amazing. It's like
I'm saving them all up. I'm saving them all up.
Kevin, I told you it's amazing.
Well, thanks for sharing all that about it. It's such an interesting story, just top to bottom, and it's an awesome song that I love, and everyone listening probably does too. So we appreciate you shedding more light on it. Now there is nothing left unsaid.
Nothing left unsaid now.
Full circle.
And you don't leave it. You just go ahead and freaking say it.
Yep. Well, cool. Well,
get off. Stop watching this podcast.
Yeah, go say your thing.
And make some phone calls.
Yeah. I love it.
Tell some people that you love them. Who is it? Go do it. I mean, that's the lesson to be learned here. Who is it? You know, what do you need to say?
Yeah.
Who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to say I'm sorry to? Mm-hmm. Like, if there was someone in your life that passed away right now, and you would be like, oh, well, what are you waiting for? I wish I fill in the blank. Go do it.
Yeah.
Right now. Right freaking now. I got so lucky with my best friend, Chad, you know, because he knew he had, you know, a month or two to live. And we actually got to have a great phone conversation, you know, like at the very end, and then go see him at Thanksgiving and all that. And I was there at the hospital with him the day before he died. But we had this phone conversation and knowing he was going to die. And it's so funny because I had that moment with my best friend and I really didn't know what to say. You know, but I had the moment. So it's like, I got lucky. That and I'm very thankful for that. And I don't really think that there was anything to say with him. We'd already said it, you know.
Right. Because by that point, you had all this time with him after this moment with your grandfather, and you had become that person who does say things that say.
I'd said it a lot. And I did say in the phone conversation, I was like, you're the best friend anybody could have. And, you know, and it felt like he was just like, you know, I don't want to hear that. But like, I was like, I got to, man. I'm sorry. You're the best friend, you know, that anybody could ever have. And I've loved being your friend, you know, and, you know, he's just like, you know, you kind of just, you know, like you too, but let's, you know, I don't really,
Yeah.
Oh, I'm dying, but like, can we pretend I'm not? You know,
Right.
Because
Which,
going through it, it's completely different. You hear that crap, it's just like I can't imagine hearing it. You know, it's
Right.
probably the worst.
full circle also, the acoustic video for this month of content is Shot Heard Around the World, which was a song you wrote for Chad. So, man, we're just the web is just being woven all around us. So super crazy.
Which is another, and I'll just say this about Shot Around the World. Like, the point of that song was like, he was not going to let his sickness define him. That was his shot heard around the world, was that, you know, like, I'm going to live. Oh yeah, cancer, screw you. You're going to kill me eventually, but until that point, I'm going to live.
So amazing.
And like the best part of that song, you know, like, is I will not let you dictate how I live and how I die.
I love it.
I have control of my life. That was written in 2010, and he didn't die until two years ago.
Yeah.
So that sucker fought.
I love it.
He lived so much. I mean, he went freaking scuba diving in like South America somewhere, you know, like, you know, did all these photography trips, you know. I mean, it started a business.
Yep.
An ice cream business, you know. He literally was like, cancer, screw you, I'm going to live. And that's the shot heard around the world, man. It's like, you know, we all have a death date, you know.
Yep.
And that's what we say to our death date. I'm here to live, baby. You know.
Yep.
That's the shot heard around the world. It's like, you know, you can't have me. I'm not going to let you dictate how I live and how I die. I'm going to live. So another.
There's a lot of great stuff here. So great. Go say I love you to some people, and we'll see all y'all next month. Thanks for being part of Rebel Society.
We love you.
Yes, we do. We're saying it. We're not going to let you. Not going to be guilty when the entire Rebel Society dies. We never told them that we love them. We love you.
We love you. It's happening right now.
See y'all later.
Say